Hello, everybody. Well, I'm working for a German service provider for the German insurance industry, and this is totally unrelated to what I'm talking now about. But we are also doing documentation, and this is related. So over the last years, I have developed some plugins for the DITA-OT that are not totally related to our stuff and possibly useful for some other people. So I put them online as open source on GitHub, and I want to go through them. They are pretty much unrelated to each other. So after each of these plugins, I will ask for questions. And of course, at the end, we can go back as well. So the first one is a post-processing step. The idea is two things. Let's just to demonstrate, I have even provided some documentation. It's a README. So three simple features. First, you can dynamically determine the name of a PDF file name. In my case, often at some days I publish more than 10 PDF documents because we have quite small, and every time renaming them to the proper name is quite annoying. So since all the information is already within the document, like the version defined as a key or some product or stuff like this, so I implemented a plugin that runs an XSL script that outputs the file name I want to have and then uses this for the PDF. So my simple map, I have here some data element which uses key references for the product and the version. And I have implemented a very simple XSL script which provides text output and just looks in my data map file for the book metadata element with the PDF name and returns the name of the resolved name. And when I run this with my so it should generate my PDF, not with a standard name, simple map.pdf, but with my customized name. And you can see here, product 2, version 1.0. And in my out folder, you also see only this file. And additionally, I can zip my output file. It also works for my HTML output. So my personal use case is when I created this documentation, or part of it, I want to upload it to a website, and the upload format is zip. So when I generated all my variants of my documentation, it's already there. I can just upload it right away. To demonstrate what I have to do for this to work, to show you the parameters. First, I have my dita-semia PDF output file. And dita-semia is the name of this open source project, Semantic Information Architecture. It's a different discussion about the name I want to skip here. But you will find this dita-semia quite often during this talk. So here I provide the path to an XSL script where that returns the name of my file. And furthermore, I have some parameter postprocessing.zip, yes or true, it does what it suggests. So, well, it's a simple plugin, so that's all. Is there anything you can ask about this? Yeah.
Does the zip part works with HTML output?
Yes, it works with a special behavior. I can demonstrate it. I thought. Well, for the PDF, there is an extension point for the as a post PDF extension point. There is no, at least to my knowledge, no extension point for the HTML. So you have to add to your custom HTML output a dependency to my plugin, and then it works. Well, if yeah, I don't have prepared the translation, but in principle it works, and it's a simple end command, so it's no magic there. Okay, so let's move on to the next step, topic numbering. Well, in the PDF, it's quite common to have topic numbers, and so it's the same for our documentation. We also provide our documentation in HTML format, and since on the phone we are also often referencing to some section by the topic number, and some people prefer HTML, some people prefer PDF. So finally, I also wanted to have the topic numbers within our HTML output, and it's in PDF. It's quite simple because you have a single merged file, and numbering is, I think, about 5 lines of code. In HTML output, you don't merge all the files together, so getting the topic numbering working is a little more difficult, still possible, as I have proven. And so what I have done is, it's a simple, it's a single pre-processing step, but a post-pre-processing step. So right after all the standard pre-processing of DITA-OT, my test starts, and since running the test is not that interesting, I will just show you the result. Because it looks a little nicer, I use the web help output from Oxygen, and as you can see, the front meta topic didn't change. I have, besides the number, I have also a configurable prefix for chapter or appendix, and taking a look at chapter 2. Here, this chapter 2, this is content generated by my plugin, and also the figure numbering, I wanted to have it with a chapter or appendix number and a consecutive number. So if I look at chapter 2.1, I have figure 2.2 and then figure 2.3 and so on. So the numbering is consecutive across all topics. One problem about making it a post-pre-processing step is that all the link texts are already generated, and usually in my links I also want to have my topic number added. So what my plugin does, it also modifies all the generated content of my cross-reference. So here I have, as test case, cross-references to several elements, and you see also table B2, the text added. What you need to do to make this work, so parameters, well, actually there are a lot of parameters because you can customize it in several ways, like specifying a prefix for topic, table, figure, chapter, and so on. But the main part is just you need to activate it. And just let me show you. So here you see the parameters required. That's wrong. Sorry. Okay, so here, as I said, just provide parameter for this topic num activate true, because when otherwise without this parameter, it would be enabled in every, since it's a pre-processing step, it would be enabled in any transformation type you start. So you have to activate it explicitly on your transformation you want to do. So I know, I think Elliot implemented something similar, but when I implemented this, I wasn't aware of it. And when I got to know it, it was done. So why change the running system? So if you are not happy with Elliot's, or you just want to test another one, here it is.
Well, so the difference is you've done yours in pre-processing, and the numbering that I do is done in the final presentation stage. Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, this might be a better solution.
Okay. Actually, so you can do this even with PDF. Actually, for testing, I run this pre-processing step with my own PDF transformation, so all the topic numbers should be doubled. So I can very easily check them in the table of contents.
Nice.
But for performance, I wouldn't recommend to use this in PDF because it's more overhead than in the standard on the merge file. Any questions on this part? No. So let's move on. Again, for the HTML output, I like to use SVG images whenever possible, because in PDF it looks very nice. You can scale it very well. And for HTML output, there's unfortunately an issue. Let's just show you one sample. Well, let's start with an Oxygen, because Oxygen displays them correctly. Okay, so I can't further. Yeah, okay. So the first three images are all SVG images, and the last one is PNG. So it looks pretty much the same, except the number at the end. Now when I run the transformation to standard HTML output and look at the result, you see in my browser the font has changed. And I remember I had some more issues, and I was very unhappy with this result, and I wanted to make sure, because we really publish our documentation, it should look exactly as I want it to be. So I didn't want to take the risk of using SVG images in our published HTML output, but still I like SVG, and I also don't want to export my drawn images to SVG and PNG and so on. So my idea was to automatically convert all the SVG images to another format. I chose PNG, which is a good choice, I think. And also I implemented this as a post-pre-processing step within for DITA-OT. So we can just run transformation. And now you should see, well, the conversion, I didn't implement it on my own, of course, because there's open source Patrik I used. And you see here a pre-processing step, image convert, and it just converts the figure 1 SVG to figure 1 PNG, and rasterizing it. And as I configured, it's also deleting the original file, which what my plugin doesn't do, it doesn't change the reference. So when you just activate this pre-processing step, the resulting HTML output will reference not existing images, because it's still referencing the SVG image. Because going through all my topics, it's an overhead that makes no sense, and it's very easy to customize your HTML output, which of course I have also provided as a demonstration. So let's take a look. At my sample output. So here my data to XHTML PNG with another initialization. So first I activate my image conversion to true, and furthermore I provide my custom XSLT script, which is extremely simple because it just references, it imports the original XSLT script for data to HTML, and it provides a very simple additional template that matches on every reference of an image that ends with SVG and converts this with PNG. So because it's very easy to integrate it, this change of the file name that you reference in your custom HTML output, I didn't put it into my pre-processing step, because then it's overhead running all through all the topics and stuff like this. And so just to show that it's actually working. Okay, here you already see now the figures are all PNG, and of course now they look all the same. So questions about this part? Yep.
Well, I've wanted to do something like this for a long time, but in particular to integrate image magic, to do more general image transformation, but I never got around to it. So now you've provided the perfect base for that.
Yep. Well, if you look at the code, you might be disappointed because it's so simple. Patrik provides end interfaces, so it maybe 10, 20 lines of code. So maybe I shouldn't have told you.
Yes.
Which library do you use for conversion?
Batik, or at least it's some time ago that I implemented, but yeah, Batik.
Did you choose Patrik by default because it's in the DITA-OT?
Because I knew that Oxygen uses Batik, and it always worked as I expected.
Okay.
So, and I also checked that they provide already some end support. So there was no reason to look further when everything is fine.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, halftime. So the next one is yet another PDF transformation. The actual reason that I put this on as open source is more because, well, that's the PDF transformation I use for my company. Of course, not exactly because I didn't put our company logos into it. But I want all my other plugins to work with this transformation, so it just makes sense to have not a dependency on my test cases to some internal transformation type. So I just put this also as open source. Not just very few things I like to mention. So in my footer, I put some version and the title. You will find, since I was quite lazy, and our company has something very specific. We are a very German company, so we have no localization at all. Even some source code is written in German. And so I was also lazy, so you will find some hard-coded German words in this. And I had no argument to put work into this so far to make it variable. So just don't wonder if it's nothing broken with your transformation, it's just hard-coded. So what I just want to highlight is we are documenting our software, our XML interface, so we have to deal quite a lot with identifiers. And identifiers tend to become quite long, and combining long identifiers with hyphenization doesn't work very well. But I found a solution, possibly the solution, and that is just by adding soft hyphens at specific suitable points makes this work really well. So for instance, if you have identifiers with uppercase and underscore, adding a soft hyphen after every underscore allows, of course, the FOP to break at soft hyphen, but suddenly now even the remaining parts of the words, so without the underscore, now the language-specific hyphenation patterns are applied. So for instance, if I didn't modify this very long identifier with underscore, so this is my obviously test identifier. If you run this without modification, no hyphenation will be applied. So it would run through this page. Now I have added a soft hyphen before and after each underscore, and suddenly even within the remaining part, so identifier, the hyphenation patterns are applied. So I have in my, just by experience, it works also with camel case identifiers and also with numbers and so on. So for me, this works very well. And of course, you don't have to use the whole PDF transformation. You just could copy the very few lines of code to put this in your own transformation to make this work with code phrase. Some more interesting. So I've also added quite a lot output classes for the definition list, which are not that exciting, except maybe this one, the tree output class. So since we are defining XML interfaces, and there are also other cases where we have hierarchical data, I want to display both the hierarchy and also some description to it. So what I have created here is a way to display nested DL entry elements. So you have here on the left side, you have quite visibly the hierarchy, and still you have nicely aligned some description to it. So this just, I haven't seen this somewhere else. and I think it's good. And one more final part, well, we use the status attribute on our elements just to manually highlight some changes. And I also wanted to make this visible. Again, you can see my laziness here. It's a German word geändert for modified or new. And for several elements like topic, paragraph, list item, and so on, I identified some nice place to add this marker to highlight this chapter contains some modifications and stuff like that. So as an alternative to green background color or stuff like this. And also in my table of content, I have this identifier. So that's just yet another PDF plugin. This would be a place for questions.
Yes, one.
Which one is that? I forgot. I missed the name of the plugin that contains
PDF. DITA-SEMIA PDF. Yeah. Okay. So next one, it's a diff little. So it's a diff mechanism. So as I told you, we're using DITA for displaying our interfaces and also for our internal functional software specifications. And it's very important when I provide a new version to highlight the changes to the previous version. When I switch to DITA, standard DITA, much closer to standard as my previous environment, I was hoping I could also use a standard diff tool like DITA compare from Delta XML, and I tested it, and the results for me, they are very disappointing. It didn't work with DITA maps and several issues I had. And since I had already previously implemented my own diff mechanism, well, I choose to do it once again and provide it as comfortable as possible as a DITA-OT plugin. So I have provided some slides because it's easier to understand. So the first is my own, it's in separate trans type, resolve for diff. So the idea is so the DITA-OT pre-processing step provides already maps and topics and images in a temp file. And what my resolve for diff does, it performs some normalization on the maps and topics and puts them all into a single zip file. It's just for convenience, because later when I want to create a diff for my new version to an older version, I only need to provide my old version as a single zip file. So I don't need to check out from my repository any earlier version. I can just handle it as a single file. And the next other part I'm providing is the post-preprocessing step. So after the standard preprocessing, I have my own processing step that makes the comparison and highlights or marks all the changes. And since I provided this as a pre-processing step, I can use this with any output whatsoever. I use it with my own PDF, but I don't see any argument why you shouldn't use it with HTML or whatever output you want to use. To look a little more in detail, so after the DITA-OT pre-processing step, you need to provide the URL to your zip file. This file will be unzipped, possibly also some filtering, and then my compare takes place, and then highlighting. One disadvantages of having this implemented as a post-preprocessing step is that the highlighting that DITA-OT already provides was already done, but I want my changes to be highlighted. So what I did was I disabled the highlighting within the original DITA-OT preprocessing, which was a simple parameter, and just copied the end code to perform the highlighting later. And so, yeah, this works. This just as an introduction to make this now more visible, I will show you a demonstration. So in my test case, I have my two versions parallel to each other. Of course, in your real life, you wouldn't have them in parallel, but since I'm continuously adding more test cases, it's more comfortable. So I have my test map, and I'm running my preprocessing step. And I can also show you, there are very few parameters I need. Let me just show them. So, yeah, okay, so these are all standard parameters. The only real parameter is the file name for an XSL script that generates the file name. It's the same idea as with the post-processing, which I talked to you, introduced you at the beginning. I want to have the version number within the zip file name for convenience. So I have implemented a script that extracts the file name it should be stored to. And I put into a dedicated folder, previous version, and you find here now diff test version 1.0.zip. We can take a look. You see all the data files and some image files and some list files. So all I need to do the comparison. And now imagine now I have continued working on my document and I've created a version 1.1. I want to generate my output highlighted with all the modifications compared to my previous version. So what parameters I need? So first I need to provide the URL to my previous version, the zip file. This is, since the test case, I want to run it with just one click. In my actual environment, I use this from Oxygen, the editor variable ask. So when the transformation is started, the user gets the dialog where he can choose the zip file he wants to compare with. And very important, you need to have a filter, dita-val file, to actually highlight the changes. Now, if I run this, I will get my output file. So first, okay, here, the first thing, since my version was defined as a key, and of course it had changed, we have highlighted version 1.0 to 1.1. Another feature, it's more a feature of my PDF plugin than of my diff tool, is that in my table of contents I have also highlighted not only the deleted or the edit chapters, but also those parts that contain some changes. I had some, so the relevant changes. There's a chance to filter the output. Okay, just a very few highlights. Since also another thing that I was disappointed that Delta XML didn't provide is comparing images. When I change an image, of course, it's quite difficult to highlight only the change in an image. But it's quite simple to identify that an image has changed. So I just add the new version of the image as new, with a green frame and background, and the old image with a red frame. So the reader can check on his own what has probably changed. And of course, within my text, I can highlight changes, some more special features. If there is a single word only change, I can, if enabled, also detect for single character changes. And if there are several changes within a paragraph, I merge them together to make it more readable. For instance, here you see some text. It also matches with some text here, but if I would, it would get much cluttered, or well, too many, and so I merge the changes together. And I can also deal with columns and with tables, edit columns and delete columns. Well, since time is running short, chance to ask any question about my diff plugin. Well, since this is my my diff tool is not a trans type, it's just a pre-processing step. So since the standard HTML output provides, I think, highlighting for with a dita-val file, so you could use this with any HTML output. I didn't do it on my own, but it should work. I have to admit I didn't test it, but I expect it to work. Maybe I should mention I'm currently using DITA-OT 2.4. anything, and since I tested, and I only tested with this one. But as I said, I implemented it as post-preprocessing, so you should be problem when there are some extension points missing now with later version. Okay, so the last one, since I have a talk about this resolver on Tuesday, I will just skip for now. Or if do I have 2 more minutes?
2 minutes. 2 minutes should be fine.
Okay.
I guess.
Well, the last one. It's always nice. Sorry. It's resolver. So the main idea, actually, this is the most complicated part, and I could talk for hours about it. So let's now find a way to put it in 2 minutes. The main idea is I have some custom attributes, and they are resolved to standard data content at the preprocessing stage. So one sample is I have here's some. This doesn't really look like data. It's a table. So it describes a database table with some columns, a name, and it's a type integer. It should be not empty, and so on. But I provide some attribute values by the schema as default. So first, I'm mapping it to some data elements by class attributes, and furthermore, I'm adding, for instance, here my columns. It's a simple table, and I'm adding here my CBA for content by attribute. I defined my own namespace and the header, and here I provide the header for my table. And if I run this transformation, and I added more stuff like prefix, postfix, and some other just by attributes. And when I run this with my preprocessing stage enable, you'll find here, for instance, this name, type, and description. This was generated during preprocessing from my custom attribute to the table that actually had no header. And 2 or 3 years ago, I presented already XSLT conref. I have optimized it since then. It's the idea, conref copies content from one source to the place where you want it to be. And what I did is, I can show an oxygen because it's working there as well. My idea was to not only reference the content, but also apply some XSLT transformation to it. And this is what you see here. So this is actual content, a list of references, function calls, and this is the result of my XSLT script referencing this content and generating, obviously not a direct copy, but the transformation as an SVG. And since the 2 minutes are already 1 minute over, I would just stop here. Just for advertisement, on Tuesday I have a talk about the background of this. So you are welcome.
Thank you, Patrik.